Greetings, everybody. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick explanation video for one of the questions that I posted on the discussion forum, which was the question about the intercostal arteries. Now, most of you got the answer correct that there are two intercostal arteries per space, which are called the anterior intercostal artery and the posterior intercostal artery. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to explain where they come from. And first we're going to look at the anterior intercostal arteries. Okay, now one of the main things to remember is that there are 9 anterior intercostal spaces and there are 11 posterior ones. Okay, so just a quick reminder, when we spoke about the aorta and the aorta and all the arteries in the cardiovascular system course, we said that we had 3 parts of the aorta, which were the ascending aorta, the arch of the aorta, and then the descending aorta. Okay, so that's your 3 parts there, the ascending, the arch, and the descending. Okay, now we're not really concerned with the ascending right now, so let's just leave that there. Now, when we spoke about the arch, we said that there were 3 branches that came out of the arch of the aorta, which on the right side was the brachiocephalic trunk, and then you had the left common carotid, and then you had the left subclavian. Okay, so let me just label those real quick. Okay, so you've got the left subclavian, you've got the left common carotid, and you've got the brachiocephalic artery. Okay, so those are your 3. Now, I'm not going to talk about the brachiocephalic trunk because you know that it divides into 2, so it's going to get a little messy over here. So I'm going to focus on the left side. Now, with the subclavian artery, let me just extend that a little bit. With the subclavian artery, what happens is you have a muscle that comes from the neck and actually attaches to the first artery. And what it does is that it crosses in front of the subclavian artery right there. Now this muscle is called the scalenus anterior. Okay, so what it did there is that it divided the subclavian artery into 3 parts. Okay, you've got this first part here that's from the arch of the aorta until the beginning of the muscle. And then you've got the second part here, which is behind the muscle. And then you've got the third part here, which is after the muscle. Now, each of these 3 parts gives off a certain set of branches, which you guys can remember with the mnemonic. I'm going to write it up here. Okay, vitamin C and D. Okay, now notice how I've written some letters in capital and some letters in small. Okay, the first 3 are the branches that come out of the first part here. The C is the branch that comes out of the second part here, and the D is the one that comes out of the third part here. Okay, I don't expect you to remember all of these arteries, but I'm just going to say them. Okay, so from the first part, you've got the V stands for the vertebral artery, the I stands for the internal thoracic, and the T stands for the thyrocervical trunk. C from the second part stands for costocervical trunk, and D from the third part, sometimes something called the dorsal scapular. Okay, now in terms of the anterior intercostal arteries, the one that we're concerned with is the I here, which is the internal thoracic. Okay, and I'm gonna get a different colored pen so you guys don't get confused. Let's just go with, no, blue is gonna confuse you. Okay, let's go with orange. Orange is good. Okay. So what happens is, from the first part here, you're going to have an artery that passes all... Can you guys even see the different color? I don't know, but anyways. So you've got an artery that passes all the way down here, okay, coming out of the first part of the subclavian. Now, the main features of this artery is that... Oops, sorry. Okay. It passes down the anterior aspect of the thoracic cage on either side of the sternum. Okay, so basically it passes behind the costal cartilages on either side of the sternum. So you've got one on the right and one on the left. Okay, now this artery sorry, my phone went crazy there. Okay, this artery in orange here is called the internal, sorry, you can't see it, thoracic artery. Okay, so the internal thoracic artery is the artery that passes down from the first part of the subclavian on either side of the sternum, just behind the costal cartilages. So what's going to happen is from spaces 1 to 6, okay, I'm going to have arteries branching out laterally like this. 5 and 6. Okay, so this is for the first 6 anterior intercostal arteries. Okay, and this is obviously on the left side, and then you've got the same thing happening on the right side on this side over here. Okay, then what happens is the internal thoracic artery ends by splitting into 2. Okay, one of its terminal branches is called the superior epigastric artery, and that's just going to go off to the abdomen and do whatever it does down there. Okay, the other one is called the musculophrenic artery. Okay, what the musculophrenic artery does is that it gives off the anterior intercostal arteries to the last 3 anterior spaces. So the first 6 come directly from the internal thoracic. The last 3 are going to come from the musculophrenic artery, which is a terminal branch of the internal thoracic. Okay, so that is a summary of the anterior intercostal arteries, and we're going to do a separate video for the posterior one.